And we're live. Sorry about the timing there, people. Welcome to the Liquid Swan channel. I have here Dissident Nomad, a good friend who I've known for about a year now or so. We both started writing for Praxarchy, and he has a lot of information and knowledge of the economic system in terms of dollars and cents. How you doing, Nomad?
Hey Swan, yeah, good to be on stream today. I think we've known each other a bit longer than a year, to be honest, buddy.
Mm.
I think it's
Yeah,
a
it might
bit,
be. Yeah.
yeah. Because I was going to say, I mean, I've been on Praxarchy since mid 2022, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. I did my first stream at the end of 2022. That was with Radlib, Stephen Carson, our good friend, and
Oh
also with
yeah.
the Longhouse chaps. So the time really flies by on the online right. You don't realize it, but yeah, it goes by a lot quicker than you kind of realize, I think. So
Yeah, that's
um,
true. Yeah, it's probably
yeah,
closer to almost 2 years, I suppose.
I think so. Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, you were on with the Longhouse chaps not long after I debuted with the my petrodollar article, and you were doing Exodus. Is that right? Was that your first one?
As this was my first sort of hit, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
then I
um,
think Ludic Path at around the same time he took over Proxarchy too. So
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, really happy to be on stream. I mean, I'd go as far as to say you're probably the oldest sort of friend I've had in these circles, along with yeah, probably Ludic and my old Praxarchy editor Cameron as well. So yeah, it's good to be on. Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Well, we were just talking. This is before we came on. What's happening in London right now? It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, to be honest with you. Tommy Robinson, who I'm sure everybody will know, British patriot, kind of centre right, kind of definitely very counter jihad. It goes back to the early zeros, early noughties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Tommy Robinson had a march through London yesterday with a typically kind of patriotic crowd in the centre of London, Westminster. I think they went from Victoria Station to Westminster. And there were lots of other people accompanying him. Carl Benjamin and some of the other Lotus Eaters guys were there. Mayor Toosey, if you know Mayor Toosey, Lawrence Fox was there.
Mm.
Lots of people were there, and there's the usual drama, real life Andy drama that goes along with it. So I'm kind of following in real time. Um, so yeah, it's been quite a busy 24 hours really. Certain people from the UK right were not there. You know, it's just so hard now in 2024 because the
Mm.
centre right is so splintered. Like it's just become so fractured among different groups. Political and in the commentariat side of things that these are interesting times, as they say. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are let's say question Tommy Robinson. So I'm not. I don't know. What's your opinion on him?
It's really difficult, dude. It's a very layered and a very nuanced kind of situation we have here. Tommy Robinson is much more civic nationalist, if you know what I mean. He's kind of
Mm-hmm.
very much aligned. He's kind of almost a one issue thing. So his whole take is the counter jihad thing. I mean, he basically, um, the guy basically made that kind of position his own in the UK anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, he does a lot of things with. He's also aligned in your country with Ezra Levant, the Sun
Mm-hmm.
News and things like that. And yeah, he's, he will kind of cross over with, you know, lots of people, whether it's Nigel Farage, whether it's Carl Benjamin, whether it's a bit further afield, Ayan Hirsi Ali, all these types of, the counter jihad thing. Now, he has links to, that certain country in the Middle East, which seems to be
Sweden.
yeah, to Sweden. He has a Swedish links in inverted commas that are quite well known and quite explicit. At one point, about a decade ago, I think he was a bit under a decade ago, he was actually running for the European Parliament at one point. He's been everywhere, Tommy Robinson. He's had a few run-ins with the police. He spent some time in Spain away from the movement for a couple of years, where he's a bit more quiet, sort of thing. But now he's back in the frame, and a lot of people say the timing is very interesting because it's all post October the 7th, 2023. Obviously, that date when the Middle Eastern affairs kind of flared up again. So I don't know. Is he a net positive? I think he probably is, to be honest, if you're going to put me on the spot, because he's able to rally tens of thousands of people in the center. And these people are, you know what it is, Swan, like they're passionate. Their heart is in the right place, but maybe their mind is not. But it also gets quite frustrating because they draw the line at Islam, counter jihad, and all that stuff, and well, it is a problem, but I think we can all agree it's not the only problem, but it definitely is an issue. But they don't really explore any deeper structural problems with the system we have, the meta-political themes and things like that. It's this kind of, but it overlaps as well with, the Brexit crowd, anti-EU, a lot to do with, anti-mass immigration as well. A little bit of overlap with what we would call the football crowd. I don't want to say hooligan, but, the kind of working class. There was a meme a while back. I'm not sure if you remember the white van meme. So it's like the white van man, like kind of, blue collar, sort of salt of the earth, kind of England till I die. And he's a manifestation of that. So, it will kind of rumble on. And but that's just part of the day in, day out news cycle of being, on the right, in the right, and in the UK. And this is it really. So
I know a lot of people like sort of denounce him, but to me it's sort of like, well, you can't really win them all. It is kind of suspicious though that like he sort of comes out right now at like this moment as if he's sponsored by a certain Swedish business people.
Yeah,
so yes.
The links are apparently, I mean, they are quite explicit and they're hard to deny, to be honest. I mean, he's done all kinds. He's done trips to Sweden. He's worn T-shirts with the IDF on it. It was sorry, the SDF. He's been to the war. Like he's at this point, he's probably done as much for Sweden as he has for the UK. But that's where his paymasters are. I got a friend actually from my time in Korea. He's kind of in our spheres as well, but he's more of a passive observer. He has a really funny. His name's Alex. He's got a funny line. It's like Tommy Robinson is just like Winston Churchill. He has substance abuse problems, and he's sponsored by a certain group in the Middle East. So this is a modern iteration of that, I think. But
it makes sense that some people would be suspicious of him. Then
yeah, they are.
He did sacrifice though.
Yeah, he did. I mean, a lot of people in our spheres, they kind of are very suspicious of him, and they're, I don't know. It's kind of hard because a lot of people now are like, there's this whole ring of commentators, Tommy Robinson, Katie Hopkins. There's so many of them, and then they will overlap with a satellite TV channel we have called GB News. You may have heard of them, which are
Mm.
actually Arab owned and funded. Anyway, that's another story. Then there's Talk
Oh.
TV. There's the Daily Mail. It's this whole network, this whole mainframe of civic nationalist discourse and talking points. But as we all know, it's good up to a point. It will only take you so far and it won't take you beyond. And one of
Mm.
the problems, one of the fault lines is, the Middle East, Sweden. And so that's just it, really. That's where we are. But,
It
it's
makes you
kind
wonder, like, what the government in the past was thinking, bringing all like these uh Finns and um just it kind of, you sort of like the Swedish delegation, I guess you could say, and then you have like the quote Finnish delegation. Um, and the Finnish delegation is getting huge, I guess, in the UK to some degree. I mean, I don't live there, but when I was there, it seemed like there was a lot of them. Is that is that generally the case, or are they expanding as fast as, say, Tommy Robinson is complaining about? By Finns, I mean people
Yeah.
from the Middle East
Oh, right.
that
Okay.
aren't
I think
aren't
they're not as
Swedish.
protected as the Swedes, but
Oh yeah.
that's kind of it's kind of funny how you say the Finns because Ludik and Walrus and that crowd, they have this sort of thing with the Finns, right? They're not like real Nords. They're kind of like interbred or something. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, to be absolutely honest, dude, I mean. The Muslim population, it basically doubles every decade. I think it's the same in Canada. I mean,
Mm,
it really is a huge structural problem. There's no doubt about it. There's no getting away from it. I mean, if you look at the protests, the pro-Palestinian ones that have taken place since October the 7th, I mean, it's absolutely it's mind-boggling. It's crazy, and we know what their fertility rate is. Their birth rate is very high, um,
mm,
and there's no doubt about it. I mean, you can only play 4 or 5D chess for so long before you have to confront um, the problems that are on your doorstep that are evident, every day, and
mm,
it's kind of correlated, right? So the larger they grow, the Finns, Middle Easterners, the more the Tommy Robinson side kind of um, gets kind of energized by that, and then they respond, and it's this kind of table tennis ping pong game, back and forth, and
mm,
we're kind of on the periphery, but we're also sandwiched in the middle here. But I mean, obviously, we're going to side with the Tommy Robinson crowd. There's no doubt about it. But as time gets on, you see, the UK is a small country. It's a small country. We're not that big.
mm,
Canada's huge. US is huge. I know not all of Canada is particularly hospitable or can even be it can even be inhabited by
mm.
humans, but it's still big,
Yeah.
Whereas here we are small. So if you're in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, you see it. You see it everywhere. But it's such a complex state of affairs, Swan. They're not
Mm,
the only problem. They are a problem, and they're a big problem. But there are loads of other uh, structural problems. I think the problem we're having in the West, certainly in Europe and the UK, is that all these problems are kind of reaching a crescendo at the same time. It's sort of become
mm,
this critical mass, and we're kind of really wondering how to deal with it. I think it's good in a way because it pushes more people to our circles, if I'm being honest with you, because they have to think differently about the problem, about the situation, and some of those people will naturally, come into our spheres. Whether it's Carl,
yeah.
whether it's AA, these they're pretty big. I sometimes think we're a bit bigger, a bit more influential than we give ourselves credit for, because there's a lot of grey lines from Tommy and the Civ Nats, the Katie Hopkins crowd, through to the Lotus Eaters and whatnot. You've then got loads of channels are on the periphery, the New Culture Forum, Trigonometry. I mean, I don't know about you, but every week a new center right, channel or publication springs up
Yeah.
out of nowhere. They'll have 10 to 50,000 subscribers. Do you know what I mean? They'll have
Yeah.
1 to 5,000 viewers and things. And it's these people, Douglas Murray, Matthew Goodwin, Peter Whittle, this crowd, and it all blurs into one thing. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I think it's a mixture. I think there's net positives, but I think some people only want to go so far, and I understand that. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's all there. It all forms part of the background and the broader kind of thing we're in. I'm doing an article now. I'm doing an article, Swan, on the back to the 90s meme, because that's really
Yeah.
popular at the moment. It's kind of everywhere. And, I got to be honest, we never had any of this in the 90s. We didn't. I mean, I was younger, but I mean, our politics went as far as the Clinton Monica Lewinsky scandal. And that was it. That was your politics, to be honest.
Yeah.
And now, well, I don't know. Fukuyama was definitely wrong. It never ends. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's a crazy thing to think. Like, do you feel like in the UK, like you import a lot of the American bullshit or issues?
oh yeah, absolutely. It's America sneezes and we all catch a cold. I mean, you have an
Yeah.
actual physical border with the US. As obviously we all know basic geography, but we have this quote unquote special relationship,
Relationship.
which is
Yeah.
nonsense. But I mean, the fact is a lot of this stuff just it just migrates, and because of technology and because of the 24-hour news cycle, this stuff comes into Europe so quickly, whether it's George Floyd, whether it's a rainbow dildo, trans this, LGBT that, we get all the sludge. And this is the problem. I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of it does originate in the US. It just does. Now, is this from
Hmm.
NGOs? Is this from MNCs, multinational companies? Does it come from William Fentz and all the, the WHOs and
Hmm.
all that stuff? I mean, I think it's kind of a complex problem. I think it originates from many different kind of sources, but yeah, we're kind of always just like a perpetual half a decade behind the United States. So
Hmm.
it's I think it's all part of the same problem, and this is why we desperately need to decouple from the American imperium, because it's look, I mean, that's a different debate for a different day. I would admit during the Cold War, it was probably a net positive because we were intact. We were culturally, socially intact. But now, I don't really see it. I kind of follow alongside a lot of people, whether it's AA or whoever, and
Hmm.
I'm just deeply suspicious of anything that's American, really. So, you know,
Yeah. Well,
that's
given
just
your that's the thing that caught my eye with you at first was like your very sober descriptions of like basically how the U.S. Runs everything with
mm,
paper, like
yeah,
everything, you know.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's for me personally. A lot of it stems from that because a lot of people like, oh no, free speech on campus or transgender bathrooms, and as you know, Swan, like I've been trying to say to people, no, you got to look at these other issues because there's deeper, more powerful issues that are playing on in the background. And the regime, you can talk about elite theory and power dynamics, but page one, chapter one is divide and conquer. I think I even knew about that before I came into our spheres. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying we need to go into coalition with the trannies or anything, but you know that it's kind of smoke and mirrors, isn't it? They put up all these things to distract us, and meanwhile, there's people like me who are trying to say, oh no, petrodollar this, Bretton Woods that, US treasuries and whatnot. But it's kind of, you got to break through that wall of sound and noise in order to get there. But more people are talking about these issues actually, which is good, because when we first met, Swan, nobody knew about any of these. Nobody cared about the dollar, political economy. It just doesn't fit into the narrative. But a lot of global events, I got to say, Mr. Putin in Russia, he's mentioned it consistently, most recently with Tucker Carlson and that interview. The Chinese are mentioning it more, the BRICS, and people are like, oh, I got to take issue with this. Oh yeah, they might have a point here. America is essentially able to spend, borrow, and consume by having other countries loan it money at very low interest rates, borrowing in their own currency. There may be something there. So yeah, it's that's part of it. The cultural stuff is still important. I do want to stress that. And America co-ops a lot of power from media, from entertainment, from Hollywood, from Netflix, from Disney. You can go on and on and on. It's explicit and sometimes it's a lot more subtle and whatnot. But it's all part of the same issue, because where does their power in those areas come from? Well, it comes from the dollar, because the dollar is always going to be the center of gravity for the American empire, whether that's corporate, banking, tech, NGOs. Do you know what I mean? It all comes back down to that one thing. So yeah,
and they'll kill for it too. Like it's like the one thing that they'll kill
yeah,
anybody about.
yeah. I
Which
mean,
is,
an attack. I said it very succinctly in I think one of my articles. I think petrodollar too. An attack on the dollar is an act of war in the eyes of America, and they will go to war to defend it, because in all honesty, they have to. They're 35 trillion in debt. They've got a budget deficit of 1.7 trillion. Well, the American
yeah,
government only take in 3 to 4 trillion as it is, and their budget
yeah,
deficit is 1.7. So, they're borrowing almost half of what they take in. They've got a trade deficit of about 900 billion, 850 billion. So they have to defend this system at all costs, because even with, getting to print, borrow, issue and spend their own currency on global markets, they're collapsing from within. You just look. I mean, they're basically on the verge. I mean, if they didn't have the dollar, that would probably be the final nail in the coffin, because I don't know how the US is going to survive. So yeah, these issues are all important. I know you very carefully put my links in the description. So yeah, you can find out on Praxarchy on Substack. I've got more and more streams on this if our listeners prefer streams, but it's a bit difficult, Swan, because as you know, some of these issues are a bit complex. They're not easy. It's not the rainbow flag. It's not, free speech on campus. It's
it's like peeling back a really big stinky onion.
yeah. Thank you very much. I may even have to use that. Yeah, you have to peel back the layers one after another, and you have to go back in history. You have to look at foreign policy and whatnot. But back to the point you were saying, the 2003 Iraq War, the invasion of Libya in 2011, all of these are all part of the same efforts for the US to maintain control of the global monetary system. As long as they have that, it will be very difficult to remove them, even if there's a coalition amongst China, Russia, and whatnot. It would be it's going to be very hard. So yeah.
Well, I know that I could be wrong on this, but Russia's economy is actually growing right now, like pretty good. Like, is it growing
Yeah.
despite the sanctions? I
Yeah,
believe.
that's right. They are. I mean, they forecasted that it would tank after the sanctions and being removed from the SWIFT system, and less trade in oil and natural gas. But they're trading the same, if not more. They're just doing it in different currencies. And I think, about a week ago, Swan, sorry to shill, I had a
Yeah.
fairly long article on the future of the US dollar as the world reserve currency, as a global reserve currency. And there definitely is a realignment that is taking place because I think, if you're from Canada, if you're from the UK, you're all part of the American imperium, and we have been um, for over a century now because it goes back to Pax Britannica, and it just evolved into Pax Americana. So whether you're Canadian or Australian or Western Europe, it was just you're either alongside Britain or then you moved into the American gambit, the American orbit, really, especially at the end of World War II and as the
Hmm.
Cold War got underway, it was a natural realignment. But the problem is, we live in a multipolar world now, and there's all kinds of regions around the world that are having a say, and that are, and they have different ideas of how the system should be um, assembled and where power
Hmm.
lies, and about global markets and foreign exchange and whatnot. So there is a slow and steady realignment that's going on. I mean, at the end of the day, for every commodity sale, timber, it can be tin, it can be whatever, coffee, gold, for every commodity that's traded in a unit of currency that's not the dollar, well, I don't want to sound stupid, but that's one less trade in dollars, isn't it? So the
Hmm.
global economy is going to adjust to reflect that new reality. And what's America going to do if Indonesia and Brazil start trading sugar and rubber in Indonesian rupiahs and Brazilian reals? I mean, America, are they going to send the gay? Are they going to send the friendly fire of the US military to Rio or to Jakarta? No, it's not. It's just not going to happen. I mean, they're stretched enough as it is, with
Yeah.
what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and what's going on there. So, I think the American, and because of Afghanistan and the debacle there, and the way that looked on the international stage, I think that's
Hmm.
probably emboldened America's geopolitical rivals. And the gay is stretched as it is, to be honest with you. They're already um, stretched. So, it's, I mean, I think there is a geopolitical moment that is coming, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I'm on the level of the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, uh, something something like that is on the horizon. Now, where it's going to come from, China? Is it going to come from the Middle East? Is it going to come from Russia flexing itself? I mean, who's to say? We don't know. I mean, just the other day, I saw an article like India moved 100 tons of gold from the Bank of England back to Delhi. There's all every day, Swan.
Hmm.
We look at things. Countries are trading all over the place in different currencies. They have all kinds of different arrangements. So we'll see. We'll see. But it's
Hmm.
happening. It's happening.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. There was a stream with AA a couple of weeks ago. I think it was something to do with the more debt the Americans have, the more power they have. Do you think that's somewhat correct in some way, like in terms of
Yeah,
how?
I mean, that's very true. I mean, that to an extent, you see,
Mm.
there's different ways of looking at the monetary order and the system we have. And yeah, that is very true. That is quite a nuanced point. You see, it's very difficult because countries, especially China, Japan, the OPEC countries, but also Canada, Britain, and all the other vassal states, although China isn't a vassal, get onto that in a moment. They all have a
Mhm.
certain amount, they all have a large stake in this system, Swan, because all their wealth and all their assets are denominated predominantly in US dollars. So if the dollar collapses, there would be what people call a contagion effect, like it would have effects all over the world. It'd be like a
Mm.
domino kind of effect, really. There would be tremors, from, in every region of the globe. And what the fallout will be from that, nobody really knows. But it's a bit of a problem because the way, and I wrote about this recently, the way the global monetary system is arranged is that it forces countries to act in ways that strengthen the US dollar on
Mm.
global markets. The dollar is the world reserve currency. People need dollars for goods, services, trade, commodities, assets and liabilities, investment, travel, property, and so on and so forth. So
Mm.
they're constantly entering the FX market and also the market for US debt securities and largely US treasuries in order to bolster their foreign exchange reserves. China has 1.7 trillion worth of US assets. Japan has close to a trillion as well. I think they've swapped. I think Japan's number one. I can't remember the exact figures, but the OPEC countries have trillions of dollars invested in this. We don't know about OPEC because those figures are actually highly confidential. Very few
Mm.
people outside of the American nexus and particularly Saudi Arabia that leads the OPEC countries. Very few people know that. But I mean, the problem is everybody has a stake in this system. Whether you're Belgium, you can be New Zealand, you can be Singapore, Brazil. Everybody is forced to enter into this system whereby they invest in US debt, and US debt is also US spending, borrowing, and consumption. I mean, the United States is 4% of the world, and they consume roughly 20% of the world's resources. I mean,
Mm.
that tells a story all by itself. The next country below them is China, but that's not a fair comparison. Number one, because China has 1.45 billion people. They're the most
Mm.
populous country in the world. America has 320, 330 million, so you can't compare. Number two is China is the manufacturing capital for the entire globe. So there's obviously going to be an offset in consumption of resources and whatnot.
Mm.
Um, the American empire, however you look at it, its composition of its military, 750 bases and installations in over 80 countries, being able to project power all over the globe, the subsidies to the military industrial complex, however you want to look at it, Swan, it defies any meaningful comparison. And it looks like a clown show domestically. You've got, partisan politics, they're practically, maiming each other and things. But, geopolitically, it's no joke, that it isn't. So, but how far America can flex its military might in 2024, I think that's open to debate.
Mm.
Difficult one. Um,
Well, if you've traveled quite a bit, obviously,
mm,
I haven't traveled in the same way you have, because just different circumstances. But every time I have gone, I found that the U.S. dollar is always the thing that people want. Like, yeah, even go back to 2005 when I went to Russia. Um,
yeah,
everyone wanted American dollars. Canadian dollars were monopoly money. You know.
yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was actually one of the sort of red pilling things. I mean, I remember when I first went to Japan, I was like,
Mm.
oh, you've got to, well, that was a long time ago. Actually, in those days, we actually had, do you remember travelers checks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to get travelers checks, and they're like, I was like, why can't I use pounds? The pound is the best. Come on, the UK. No, you need dollars. I was like, I'm not going to America. I'm going to the other side of the world. No, you need dollars. And you suddenly realize, when as I have done now, I've lived in like 3 or 4 different countries, I've traveled in many more, you get to see the network effect of all these things. And I remember some places I went to which were like sort of, a bit more off the beaten track, like Myanmar. I went to Myanmar, which used to be called Burma, when
Hmm.
it was under the military junta, actually, and you had to exchange your dollars at a kind of like a black market, and it was like the riskiest thing I'd ever done. And you're right, they always want dollars, crisp dollars. They'll give you extra in local currency if you use crisp bills like new bills and things like that. And like you
Yeah.
said, every other currency may as well be Disney money or Monopoly money or something. And I mean, I think it's changed a bit. The euro is widely accepted, but yeah, it was that's how it works. I think 85% of global FX transactions have the dollar as one half.
Yeah.
So that says a lot. And you can get the dollar on your high street. I can get it about 5 minutes up the road from me in a foreign currency exchange booth at my local supermarket. But then my local supermarket is co-owned by Americans, so this
Yeah.
is how it works. And as a result, America has the most powerful corporations, the most powerful banks. Um, Everything from consumer goods to fast food to electronics, they dominate so much. And other countries can't really compete on an even playing field because of the US dollar and because of the subsidies, and America gets to borrow at very low interest. So that's the situation we're in, really. So I don't know. It's
Oh,
difficult.
well, it is, yeah, it's very, it's very true. We're sort of stuck in the mud in some sense. But we got a question from the crowd if you want to take it on.
Yeah, yeah.
What are call the Shield Maiden, friend of the show? What are Nomad's thoughts on repatriation?
Um, I
I'm assuming
guess.
she means going back to the UK from the rest
Um,
of the world.
yeah, I mean, I guess she's talking about immigration, right? Not assets or something.
Oh, okay.
Or I don't know, Shield Maiden, do you want to just confirm? I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of like immigration, I mean, look, I mean, I'm all for it, but the problem is, I mean, look, this is a difficult and a sensitive subject. I don't know the mechanics of it. Some people are more vocal in this area than I am. I think um, I think it is necessary, but it would have to be voluntary. It could be incentivized, but I think it is possible, but it's going to take a lot of work. I would
Mhm.
like to see. I don't know. I mean, I think about this. I kind of think about this quite a lot because you know you can get all deep and meta political as you want, but nothing has caused more damage to the UK, and I think a lot of Europe and the Western world than mass immigration and open borders.
Mhm.
Um, and this is definitely a big talking point in these circles. I think it's going to differ from one country to the next, but we just get more immigration. We never get less, and it's kind of crazy because the country's on its knees as it
It's so
is. But
small.
it is,
Like,
and I walk around. I was walking around yesterday in the afternoon. I'm just like, there's 20, 30 million people too many here, like easily. And we've only got 65 million people, but I mean, what you can't build more water, you can't build more roads. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, the stuff is collapsing as it is. So
yeah.
I think as time goes on, the problem is um, we had an issue in the UK a couple months ago with one of the guys from Lotus Eaters, Bo Dade, who was running
Mhm.
for reform. And when reform via Hope Not Hate, that organization, um, informed them that Bo had even mentioned the idea of, I think it was re-emigration, or some people call it remigration, which is basically the same as repatriation. They
Mhm.
got rid of him from the ballot, So it's kind of a very big taboo topic, to be honest. But
Well, I
I
guess
think so.
if you have 20 million extra people, maybe they have some political power now.
Well, right. Well, this is the problem when they start organising. Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, we've got two examples of that in the UK. We've got Sadiq Khan in London, and then we've
Mm.
got the guy in Scotland. Um, is
Oh, Hamza Yusuf.
Hamza Youssef. Thank you. Thanks, Swan. Hamza Youssef, who's the leader of the SDP, who was the leader of the SDP. Now, how did they come to power? Well, if you've read any of the Populist Delusion from AA, it's they were brought to power by an organised, politically active minority that collectivized and brought one of their own um, into the forefront of political life. I think America has had it with the Squad as well. Those
Hmm.
four, Ilan Omar, Ocasio Cortez, and all of those. They mobilize intra-communally within their own group, and they're able, because of our system, to co-opt a lot of power. And I think a lot of these systems have gotten these protocols. They have to, we need to rethink them because they were designed in an age where there wasn't mass migration and open borders. It was much more homogenous. It was a much higher trust society. And now this stuff is being weaponized against us, like our systems, our culture, so on and so forth, has kind of almost been turned 180 and is used against us. So I hope that sort of answers a point Chill made. And I hope that covers a thing. We kind of went off on a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think it, I agree with it, but I don't know how you do it, to be honest with you. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Swan. I mean, it's a difficult.
Oh, load
Um,
them up on some tankers and ship them out.
yeah, that's it. The thing is, to do that, we need power. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
about power. I mean, I think it is. I mean, I'm not as optimistic as other people. There are some people in the chats, and they say, "Oh, well, if you just change the incentives, it'll naturally happen." But I'm not too sure about that because even though the West is struggling by our standards compared to the rest of the world, it's
Mm.
still Disneyland meets Never Neverland meets Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's still a paradise, on
Yeah,
Earth.
yeah,
You compare it to, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all these places, Ukraine, where else? Anywhere in Africa and things like that. I mean, they come from Eastern Europe, and that's still above a lot of the rest of the world. They come from the
mm.
Balkans. They come from everywhere. They come from everywhere. But it's suicide because they're going to have to find a system for Bulgarians and Bengalis, for Poles and Filipinos, for Afghans and Arabs, and they're going to have to make this all work. Well, how are they going to do it? It's impossible. It's impossible. It's never been done in human history. And every time it's tried, it leads to war, it leads to bloodshed, it leads to separation. Even within our lifetime, look at the former Yugoslavia, look at even
Yeah,
in Ireland, bloody hell, and they're the same people racially, they're the same people. So what the
yeah.
flip are they going to do? They can't keep on printing pounds, printing Canadian dollars, because that will lead to inflation, which is what we've got now. And then
Well,
it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? They think they can print
yeah.
their way out, print and borrow their way out, but they can't. So what after that? What solution do they have? Hug a Muslim? That's not going to work. That one didn't work from the fucking beginning. We give them
Hug an
all the
N-word.
benefits and the housing, they still want to blow themselves up. So what are they going to do? What's their solution?
You know, like Rubik's cubes. What are they? 4x4, 4x4x4.
Yeah,
Roughly.
yeah. Never
So,
done.
well, I never completed one either, but um, you know how like there's like what, six sides, so there's six different colors. Well, you can divide the six
Yeah.
different colors into six different sides, but it's like the UK cultural racial Rubik's cube is like there's like 100 different colors on there, and then they're trying to find a way to like mesh them together right. I think it's just chaos, you know, in some sense. Like when I went to the UK, um, when I arrived there, I was trying to find. So I landed in Gatwick, and
Yeah,
I was trying to get to the train station because I had a ticket my buddy bought me. Um, because I didn't really know what the hell to do. I would have been totally screwed if he hadn't done that. And I was trying to find out how to get to the train station from the airport, and I had no idea. And I'm like running around. I found a Muslim guy. He didn't speak English
yeah,
or French. And then I found a black guy, and he only spoke French. And eventually, I came across like a wholesome Chungus, like a red faced white big fat British guy. You know, the guy from the he has like a pint in this picture. Um, I found him, and he like told me right away. I was there in like a minute. But yeah, because I was basically thrown into the. Uh, it was the first time I think I've been to a place where like I didn't have enough time to get where I needed to go on my next leg, so I was like running around, and luckily this guy kind of came down from heaven and like rescued me. But yeah, I couldn't. The first two or three people I talked to didn't speak any English at all. Really, I had to like I know a little bit of French because in Canada you learn it, um,
yeah.
but otherwise I would have been screwed. But yeah, so anyways, that Rubik's cube thing. What if we took them all? Like, I mean, here's the thing. Even if we took them all, load them on boats, and you had a place to send them, well, all you're really doing is transferring that problem there. You know, and fair enough to me. That seems like wash your hands of it. Just leave it in Madagascar. You know, like there was
Yeah,
that plan for the quote Swedes. You know, even Russia had a plan for them. They had the Swedish autonomous oblast out east. So
yeah,
I
they
don't know.
do. That's right. Yeah, the Jewish, autonomous oblast. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. That was supposed to be like and that was before um, Sweden was created.
Oh yeah,
I think it was like 1929 or something like that. But yeah, I actually did a. Well, I won't go into that because that's all secret knowledge. But yeah, it was interesting experience in the UK. Like when I was there, I spent a lot of time in Swindon because Swindon was really cheap to stay
oh
compared to everywhere
really?
else. Yeah, and then I like would go to like Stonehenge or Aberbury. Uh, I think I went to a couple of those Iron Age hilltop castles. They're just basically like ditches now. Uh, but anyways, I stayed in Swindon, and but during the day, I'd be tired too because I've been traveling for almost a month by that point, living out of one bag, and so I would walk into Swindon, get myself something to eat, like a Cornish pastry, I think they're called,
Pasty.
and,
Yeah,
and yeah, yeah. And there's like this parade, I think you guys call it. It's like a little like
yeah,
mall where just pedestrians can walk. And during the weekdays, it was all like I don't know if they spoke English. I didn't talk to them, but they were like obviously not from England, you know, like Afghani or Middle Eastern. And
yeah,
then I went to, but then during the weekends, it was all English people, or you know, as
yeah,
much as I could tell. And it's like, oh, and also they would just be milling around all the time too. The Middle Easterners. I don't know. I just don't know like why would you just bring people just to mill around? But I mean, for them it's great because they're not whatever
yeah.
struggling in the real world. But I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
they stand
think,
it.
yeah, you see this everywhere. I mean, you just see dwellers and delinquents and people who they're just not. I don't. They're just from another world, and they shouldn't. They just shouldn't be here because what purpose does just standing around doing nothing do? I mean, of course, part of the problem is, if I mean, people do come from everywhere, but as you say, like Afghans, for example, if it wasn't for all these endless wars that keep breaking out, um, perhaps these people, their countries would be intact, or at least in
Mm,
better shape than they are now, and they wouldn't need to immigrate. I mean, what's one of the dominant narratives of the last decade or so, particularly in Europe, and that's the migrant crisis. And how did that happen? Well, that's intimately tied to U.S. foreign policy and wars in the Middle East, um, Libya, and destabilizing that, the bottleneck of North Africa. but also, Iraq. And so, this is all part of the same, it all forms part of the same problem, really. So, but
Mm,
I can't make sense of the UK. I don't recognize it anymore. And it's kind of very sad. I've written about it extensively, quite a lot now. I think I've got to move on to other subjects, but yeah, I'm
well,
kind of, yeah, I don't want to be black-pilled, but yeah, I just don't see how we get out of this. We can't vote our way out of it. We can't legislate our way out of it. Um, it's a very difficult one. You can't insulate yourself from it because it's too small a country. Um, so yeah, I mean
yeah. Well,
it's
and
very
that also when you said Afghan, it reminded me. I was when I was taking the train from Gatwick to, I think it was from Reading to Macclesfield or something. There's a Sikh Afghan, which I didn't know they existed, so I thought they got wiped out by the Muslims or whatever. But he was saying like this. He was asking me because I had no fucking idea what I was doing. I was on a train and I knew I was going somewhere, some place called Macclesfield. And this Sikh guy, he was friendly. I was chatting with him. I could hardly understand him, and he said, "Does this train go to Stockington?" I was like, "I don't know. Let me look at the map." So I looked at the map. I didn't see Stockington anywhere. But apparently, he was saying Stoke-on-Trent for like 10 minutes to me, and I had no idea. Um, but but yeah, it turns out it did stop at Stoke-on-Trent, and we realized that once we got there. He's like, "Why didn't you tell me it stops here?" I was like, "I couldn't hear the fuck you were saying." Um,
Yeah, there's yeah, the amount of people who just don't speak English, speak broken English and with a thick accent and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think they've lost control of the borders. The Home Office don't know what's going on. Um, yeah, it's just it's the same, you know, roundabout kind of same ideas, same problems keep on rearing their heads.
mhm.
So the
Well, the small towns though, they were really nice. I didn't. It just the small towns looked like England, from I mean, from my memory, because I've only seen before I went there. Obviously, I had only seen videos and uh, videos from a long time ago. But like Buxton, if you've ever been there, that was really nice.
oh yeah, right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but I
in
mean
the
that's like the
Shires,
resort town.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
Shires, real England still survives, which is good. But I don't know for how much longer. I mean, there is a lot to see in the UK, but our transport system is kind of it's really bad, to be honest. I mean, it's old, it's expensive, and things don't come on time. Trains cost a fortune. I mean, I can go to Paris and Rome for the same price. I can go to Manchester from London. It's kind of crazy, to be honest with
Mhm.
you.
Yeah,
But
that was
yeah,
another thing too. It was like $5 one day, and then the next day it was like 120, like, for the
yeah,
train, like, for some reason.
yeah. It's kind of we have this public-private kind of sort of system partner. It's called a public-private partnership, and yeah, it's just it's a big problem. Yeah, it's a big structural problem. Transport, to be honest. I mean, I didn't realize until I'd been abroad, and you go and see how things are done in other countries and things, and it's much more. Yeah, it's much more impressive, efficient, cost effective, and I mean, transport, healthcare, they're both the same. They cost a fortune, and they're both shit. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, so and
Well, Canada's the way Canada dealt with that, the healthcare problem, because otherwise we have the what do you call it? So our healthcare sucks. Like, don't get me wrong, but because we have the states right beside us, and they don't have free healthcare, or not free, but government subsidized or whatever. Um, we had to make a system where you could only get it if you're a quote covered by insurance. So everyone has to be. I mean, basically everyone in Canada is, except for
sure,
foreigners who have to like pay into the system before they can get it. But otherwise, we would be flooded by the states. But what I've learned in the last couple of years is like UK. I think what anybody can just walk up if they're there and use the system. And in Brazil, it's the same thing. Uh, which I think, because who goes to Brazil to get medical treatment? Obviously nobody. But the problem with the UK is like people would actually do that. So
Yeah, I just don't know what to. But I think it's so difficult. I don't know what the actual rules are now. I think non-EC citizens do need to pay, but
mm,
I'm not really sure. I think they may have changed it. It depends on their immigration status and their status in the country. Um, but yeah, it's you would think that they would have all this stuff smoothed out. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of
yeah,
them
yeah,
being in their position? But you know, every day, like you see stories about just basic stuff they can't do, or they're not sure about, or you know, simple kind of rules and laws that are just all over the place. And you know, I don't know. I've totally lost faith in the political class and the system, the democratic system. Really, I mean, we'll get a
mm,
Labour government soon. We'll have Keir Starmer. We'll probably win by a big majority, and nothing will change. Nothing's really changed since at the very earliest Boris Johnson, but even before then, I mean, most of the party, both of the two main parties, all the PMs have just sold the country, you know, down the river to globalism and, you know, the highest bidder. I mean, that's been the story of British politics in my lifetime, really. So,
mm.
yeah, but
Yeah, like it's all been sort of downhill in some sense. But I just actually I might be like a little bit biased at the moment because I just finished reading Decline of the West all the way through,
Spengler.
and yeah, Spengler, and the way he just, I mean, you don't really know if he's correct until you're sort of in it, but the way he sort of predicted things is sort of how things are going right now in the West, where
Mm,
uh, the metropolitans or the Western, the, basically the cities are what do you call it, genetic carburetors, because people don't have reproduce really in the city, so sort of keep absorbing things from the outside. And in the old days, that meant like little towns in Germany, they would their people would sort of move to the cities, and the cities would sort of eat them up, and then that's it. So it was a constant sort of absorption, and in the West the same. But now it's so bad that we're actually taking in foreigners, which actually is part of the it's part of the cycle that he describes, where um, you start bringing in foreigners, and then they start getting absorbed too. And there's actually a good chance if things don't get like if we don't bring so many in that it becomes violent, let's say, like where we're fighting over resources, that they will slowly be put into the civilizational carburetor, and what will be left is whoever is living in the countryside, and that will
right.
rebuild civilization.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. That's I've really got to read some primary text Spengler. I've only sort of heard other people talk about him and things. I mean, you know, I've got a long a long reading list, but no, that
Yeah,
what the cycle he laid out as you told it, that does seem very pertinent and very true. Really, I mean, there's different sort of interpretations of civilizational cycles, life cycles, and whatnot decline. But yeah, that seems to overlap a lot with sort of where we are now. But I mean, yeah, it's difficult because all these very liberal policies. I mean, they were enacted during the good times for us, like the Blair years and things, where you know we weren't borrowing as much, we had a better fiscal balance sheet, the society, the culture was intact and whatnot. But the problem is you know things have changed tremendously now with you know economic crises, the global pandemic. You've got you know wars happening. You know, two live conflicts. You know, things have changed. So when you start opening up the floodgates and you let in the hordes and you know the barbarians,
yeah.
then you have a lot of problems, to be honest, because you don't have the same structures and foundations that you had before. So you know, this is
Well,
where we are now. So I don't know.
Well, it makes sense too, because like if you look at the British Empire, like when people left to go to places like India, Canada, Australia, and even the United States before they rebelled. Um, they were going there not to take advantage of a system that's already existing because there was no system there. They were going to expand the empire, so to speak. And but the immigrants coming now, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like if you want to have, if you're successful where you are, you probably don't leave, right? um, Unless there's some huge opportunity. But then you end up in these metropolitan areas, and you sort of become one of those like Reddit Google people that like can't reproduce, and they're going out to restaurants all the time, and things are just kind of too expensive to offer that lifestyle, or to have that lifestyle if you still have kids, and
Yeah,
so they do get like absorbed. And in some sense, like that Sikh guy that I was talking to on the train, like maybe he has a plan, right? A
yeah,
woman here or something. But I bet you though he would be much more successful maintaining his culture
yeah.
in Afghanistan or in Khalistan or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, in India. Yeah, it's kind of weird because I don't know. I think in a kind of a white pill might be that I think some of these messages are slowly getting across to other people because I'm starting to see a lot of content from overseas saying, don't go to the UK, don't go to Canada, things are broken there, and you're only going to inherit new problems and difficulties, and there's no point, and cost of living is really high, crime's really high. So yeah, I mean
Mm,
that's one way of doing it, I think. But I think it's very it's a difficult sort of thing to really solve, really.
mm,
It's yeah. I mean, we have this sort of very globalized, integrated world, and it's kind of coming to terms with it is not easy, and there's all kinds of new systems that are going to be built around it and things that will you know will cause even more problems than the ones they purport to kind of
mm.
solve. But yeah, it's difficult now because the good times are over, and this is part of the reason why I think people like me, people maybe yourself as well, we kind of lean to the right is precisely because when there are global problems, pandemics, wars, you have the society intact with the high social trust and the high levels of human capital that's going to get you through it. I mean, well, we saw during COVID and things like that. Um, when there is a pandemic, when there are sizable problems, you don't have that. You don't have those social foundations, that cohesion. It becomes that much harder, and we're seeing it again with the cost of living crisis. Inflation and whatnot, scarcity, hoarding, and
Mhm.
things. So I don't know. It's a big sludge, really big mess to be fair. I mean, in the UK, for example, I mean, 40% of all the people born overseas came in the last decade. That's like 40% came in the last 10 years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
crazy.
the Bowden thing, send them all back and stuff. And of course, we have problems with illegal clear them out. Sorry, clear them out. We have problems with illegal migration as well, just like the Americans do. I guess all countries do too, because the reality is a lot different from the stated figures. What the government
Yeah.
tells you is never the whole truth. We know that, so you have to keep
Don't
that.
you get better data on on demographics, I think, from your grocery stores, don't you?
What's that?
I heard that
Oh,
your grocery stores, like they say, what's your official population is like, 70 million or something, and then the grocery stores are bringing in enough food for 80.
yeah, right. Okay, so this is quite interesting, actually. So when we have this every year in the UK, where the supermarkets release projections of the volume of food that's being consumed, and you can actually gauge how many people, um, broadly, very roughly speaking, are in the country from those numbers. and
Hmm.
they often say it's something like 85 million, which is about 20 million more than our stated population is 65. I think it's more now, 66
Yeah,
million. But I don't trust the regime with anything, to be honest. I don't trust them with anything. So, it
yeah. Well,
wouldn't.
in Canada, they've increased the population by 10%. The last I checked, 10% in the last 3 years,
Yeah,
which is
that's pretty
like
crazy, to be honest. That's
I think it's
insane.
about double the rate of the UK. But I mean, Canada has a lot more space, um,
Yeah,
but our infrastructure is a lot worse. So it's like, yeah, it's six to one,
yeah.
half dozen the other on that degree. But yeah, it's
I think it's like you said with the Spenglerian cycle. Nick Land and the neo reactionaries have said this as well, with the idea of the IQ shredder. Um,
that's the one. Yeah,
it's like even the ones that do well end up not breeding, and then the dysgenic, the well, that's built in, but it's all the layabouts that come and decide to have like an army of kids. The Somalians get on the bus and their family takes up half the bus.
yeah.
Everyone's looking around and like, yeah, it's funny. But
The personal transport if you're
what's that?
Somali. It's like personal transport if you're Somali.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of funny, Bomalians, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's no easy solutions. That's the thing. There's no easy
Yeah.
solutions to this, and we've probably even gone over the precipice at certain stage in our stream today. To be honest with you, so yeah, I mean, yeah, the Swedes. It's just get more Swedes in to help
Well,
with the food.
the real Swedes. So I'm gonna say real Swedes because I have family in Sweden that I discovered a couple years
You've
ago.
been, haven't you? You've been to Sweden.
Yeah, yeah, I've been to Sweden. I didn't go to Stockholm though. I was actually able to get a flight straight to Kalmar, which is like the southeast.
Yeah,
It's quite a rural area. I think Kalmar is like 40,000 people, and then there's maybe 100,000 in the metro. Um, but even there, at the university, there was people from the Middle East there.
yeah, yeah,
But it was otherwise very conservative. You go to the gas station, there's like supermodels pumping your gas. You go to the grocery store, it's supermodels putting your groceries through the till.
oh wow.
It's amazing. It's like I don't know. I don't want to say Pamela Anderson. Like whoever's who's that chick that's Sweeney. It's like
Yeah.
imagine every person that works in some minor job is that Sweeney chick.
Well, there is this theory that the harsh conditions of the Nordic countries have bred, led to, an incredible kind of the top of the gene pool really surviving, and then they spread their genes on, and this is why, they're just, quite well. Not, I don't want to just say good looking, but just have healthy genes and healthy looking and whatnot. So there is that theory, of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah, they're
yeah,
very healthy looking.
yeah,
Yeah,
the obesity rates are quite low and whatnot. They spend a lot of time outdoors and what have you not. So there's those things as well. But yeah, I think yeah, it's kind of it's kind of interesting. I've never been to the Nordic countries actually. I think I don't know. I think Poland or would be as far north as I've travelled in Europe, or maybe
mm,
even Bremen in Germany, which would be Mecklenburg around there, Schleswig. Sorry, I don't know Germany's map very well, but yeah,
hmm.
I've never been to Scandinavia. Um, it's
If you ever get a chance, in Kalmar, there's a lot of history there because they had the Kalmar Union, so
right, yeah, yeah, yeah,
they're
because
really
used
trying
to
to
be a
pump that
state.
up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
used to
cool.
be used to be an independent state, didn't it? But yeah, that's kind of it's quite interesting, I guess. But yeah, that's how's things in Canada.
Uh, economically.
Yeah, I mean, it seems
I
like
think
there's a lot of same issues, really, doesn't it?
I think most people I know are living off like they have full time jobs. Both wife and husband would have full time job. I think they're subsidizing their lifestyles with credit cards. And I think that's really widespread. And I think the boomers are doing that because they don't make so boomers. A lot of them are still working, despite the fact they're around retirement age. And what they've been doing here is because the housing prices keep going up because they don't build new housing and there's regulation. And, so the existing stock just keeps going up and up and up in value. Like it doubled between 2019, let's say 2018 and 2022. Housing prices doubled. So it went from like half a million on average to, at least in my area, to around a million, like 950 or
Oh,
something like that.
really?
Yeah. So boomers, what they do is every 5 years when they're more because I don't know how it works in the UK. I know in the United States when you get a mortgage rate, it's like 30 years, but in Canada it's just like five or so. So you can get 3 years, but it all depends on the rates will vary based on how long it is. And but anyways, most people are around five. And so every 5 years or so, the boomers what they'll do is they'll remortgage their house and then take that money and pay off their credit card, and then there's like this endless cycle. And they don't really pay off their house; they sort of just pay like a low interest rate on their credit cards, essentially. I mean, it's kind of a smart strategy if you don't have enough money. But basically, I think boomers like they sort of live in the past and they think something like they think $50,000 a year is a lot, and $50,000 a year is basically poverty now. And but they haven't adapted, so they just instead of asking for wage increases and stuff because they're I don't know why they're reluctant to. Women more than men are reluctant to, but basically they're kind of living hand to mouth now, and it's hard to. It's sort of like almost Brazil style. Like in Brazil, around 10% of the people are really wealthy, and 10% of them are sort of middle class, and then the rest are just poor. So, but except in Brazil, the poor people can't live off credit cards because they don't have any credit. But
Yeah.
here it seems like everyone's just doing that, and but that which
Mm.
is annoying because that also causes problems because now I'm not just competing against like my income's competing against this guy's income, but now I'm competing against his income. The fact that he owns a house already, and the fact that he can just mortgage his credit card debt constantly, which is it's not sustainable. But like, what's the phrase? The market can be irrational longer than I can remain solvent. So
Yeah,
I
that's
am curious. I am curious what's going to happen with that. You know.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we have a permanent housing crisis here as well. I mean, you're right. The boomers kind of do. They were lucky because they bought when it was cheap and the economy was better and circumstances were better, and now they're holding down their place in the market, not letting anyone else in. But yeah, it's yeah, the housing problems are a great sort of microcosm of the broader landscape that we face. So
Mm,
it's the same. I mean, I pretty much, I don't know, I wouldn't say I've given up sort of getting a house in the UK, but unless I marry into wealth, I think it's going to be kind of hard, really. But I think yeah, you see issues to do with property, all over the world now, where it's just such a polarized market.
yeah.
It's very difficult for first-time buyers, young people, and whatnot. But the fact that wages haven't kept up with inflation and asset values have soared. I mean, again, that comes back to a lot of the stuff I've done. I think you remember my articles on the Nixon shock in
Hmm.
'71. When
Yeah.
we had the gold standard and we had a real metallic base for money, we didn't have these problems. These problems didn't exist, but
Hmm.
they're a symptom of the profligate, policies of really the elites and whatnot, and they've kind of created these issues. So yeah, it's a bit. That's another issue we've got to confront. Really, I think if
Well,
we yeah, so
was it? Well, what you could do is if everything's still screwed and like by the time you hit retirement age, as long as you have some savings or pension, or maybe like a stock, even a small stock portfolio, you can go to like third world countries. Well, you know what this is like, and then the property values are way lower. So I'm thinking of doing. I'll probably retire in Brazil or Paraguay or something like that, because
Yeah,
um, assuming though that like the pension system and all that stuff even exists at that time, you know, if that doesn't happen, then I'm
yeah.
just gonna be yeah.
It's a problem. Like I was in Malaysia last year, and the same thing is happening there that's happened here because people see that property is cheap and affordable, and that encourages uh, foreign direct investment into the property market. But the problem is that leads to asset values rising, and then suddenly it's not like cheap anymore, and you kind of have the
Yeah.
problem that we have in the West, and it's this kind of it's this same cycle that you know sort of just goes round and round, and the same cycle of problems follows with it. The distortions in the property market lead to distortions across the broader economy, and people stop borrowing, and like you said a few minutes ago, and then it's just then you know same you're back at the same stage really. So
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's
then
true.
those locals want
Well,
to go and find somewhere else, but whether
well,
it's
yeah. That's my goal would be to go to like some place almost out of in the middle of nowhere, buy like a big acreage and have like a fucking palatial mansion or something like that. If it's far
what
enough away from town, hopefully it wouldn't affect the values.
like those
But again, I don't want to spread the cancer.
yeah, that's the problem. I feel the same. I feel guilty
Yeah.
as well, actually, because it's almost it's never good for the locals. But it's that's the issue we're in. I mean, you're quite into more South America. I've never been actually. I'd like to, but Brazil or one of those German towns you could probably go to or something. Maybe they look pretty trad and they look pretty you know inoculated from modernity. So
Well,
that's
they have a Confederate settled there after the Civil War,
oh
and
really?
they do yeah, and they do I think 10,000, 20,000 went. I think half of them stayed in the end. But it was when there was no one in Brazil, so there's quite a probably 500,000 people that are descended from these Confederados, they call them, and they do
Oh
like
yeah.
ceremonies and dances, and it's like sort of antebellum South and stuff. And, it's interesting because like here that would be like, ooh, you can't do that because my Confederate flag evil.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, I guess. I didn't know that about the Confederates. Yeah, that is very that's very interesting. I knew there was some German migration. I know a lot of people migrated after World War II and whatnot to Argentina and Chile. And
Yeah, yeah.
sorry about that, the
Well, I saw that.
sneeze. But that's all really interesting. I remember you showing me some of those articles, and when you were doing Exodus and things, and I'd never seen that before. Yeah.
Well, the Americans weren't were because I did that speech at Shieldings in Tennessee, and
Yeah.
the Americans weren't a big fan of the idea.
Oh, were they not? Oh, right. Yeah,
No,
because your speech there. I guess.
it
I
might have
guess
been the
not.
most controversial speech, I think, because like most of them were like, "Why would I leave?"
Yeah, exactly. It would have been funny if I kind of preceded you, and I said, "Yeah, the American system's the worst
Yeah,
thing."
that'd be so funny.
That would have been humorous, but that's funny. I mean, you can't really. People don't want to leave. They don't want to leave their roots and things, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's. I know it's a very contentious issue in these circles. I mean, it tends to polarize opinion and divide people. Um, so yeah, it's difficult. I mean, some people will say different things on stream, and then another thing in private. But
yeah,
I won't say much more about that. But it's hard. I think also it's harder because I mean, you have a family, which is great, and that changes the dynamics of the issue, doesn't it? I mean, let's be honest. Um, so yeah, there's that to factor in as well. But I think I think for the UK, I think the next decade and a half is going to be more of the same. Really, I think it's just going to be a declining standard of living. Things are going to cost more. Services are going to, you know, get
Hmm.
worse. And yeah, it's only going to get worse from here. So I think you got
Yeah.
to be prepared. Whatever plan you've got, you've got to keep an eye on the future. And as bad as things are in the present, but yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's it, isn't it? Yeah, but
Well, hey man, I've taken up quite a bit of your time. I don't want to keep you all day, so but it's been great, man. A really good conversation.
yeah,
I've been thoroughly entertained. Um,
it's been really good. I'm happy you've got your channel up now and you're doing regular content because you do a lot of good work behind the scenes. So for all our listeners, Swan is really, always at it, and you don't always see that if you're just consuming content, and it's really good. Yeah, that you're streaming regularly. So hopefully I can come back on and whatnot and talk about whatever articles or projects we've got. So that'll be good.
that's great. And I have your Substack listed in the description, and your X, so everyone follow Dissident Nomad. If you want to
Yeah,
learn about
thanks.
how the system actually works from underneath, you got to read
Yeah,
his articles.
regular content all the time. I try and release something every week. Yeah, twice a month I've got like a bigger article, something that's more well researched. But yeah, if you want to hear the ramblings of a dissident, then yeah, head over to dissident nomad at substack.com. But
And you're
yeah,
on. Are you still putting on Praxarchy?
yeah, it's still on Price. Like, obviously they changed the site. I think I'm not sure if they do some of it remotely and some of it by algorithms. So, I mean, the site's great. I just wish I spent more time there. But yeah, you can check
Mm.
me out, praxarchy.com. Obviously, Swan is there as well. So that's a great outlet for dissident thought and ideas. And yeah, they've been a tremendous help. So, you know,
Oh,
um, yeah,
I got a
that's right.
question for you. Now, just before we go, have you thought about doing any fiction writing?
Fiction writing, that's funny, Swan. I haven't thought about fiction writing, but I've definitely thought about fiction reading. Because
Mm.
when you're kind of like, an econ guy like me, political economy, it's kind of dry. Do you know what I mean? The things you
Mm.
read, it's like, very factual. And yeah, I kind of want to go back to my literary roots. I mean, I read um, your article for Corn Picks, is it? Sorry.
Corn Crake Mag.
Yeah, Concrake. Yeah, Concrake and things. I think you've got a good talent for that. My style is more prosaic. Mine is not, but I really want to broaden the things I write about because there's a lot going on. And the Empire of Dollars is coming to an end. I'm happy to say, um, way overdue. But I've got other projects in the pipeline. But yeah, I wish I had more time to read. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. But I don't foresee any fiction writing initially on the horizon, really.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Well, hey, if you ever get it, we can get you on the Corn Crake Mag. They
Yeah,
got
I
pretty good
use
editors.
Sean
So
Maiden. You do great work there, and it's very slick, very professional. I was really impressed with the layout, the design, the graphics, and things. So, who's behind that? That's you, and
it's mostly called Shield Maiden. I just
okay,
support it because I wanted to get work out there. But
yeah, that's
actually,
great. He's doing
anyone who
great work.
starts a project, I like to support because it's a lot of work and I don't have the time for that. So
Yeah, it is. It is. That's the thing. It's spending your time wisely. I think it's always difficult. There's always so much going on and whatnot. But being part of the broader online right, it all helps. I think it's all for the greater good and whatnot. I mean, as long as people are pushing in the right direction, I think that's the main thing really. So
yeah,
everybody do their little bit. That's the best you can hope for, I think.
Many hands make for light work.
Yes, yeah. On that,
Well, hey,
that's a good note to end on, I think.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for coming, Nomad. I'm just going to end the stream, but stay on for a little bit so I can
Yeah, yeah, sure.
say goodbye. Right.
Okay, guys, take care.
Cheers,
Thanks a
buddy.
lot.